I'm Nate Kresge from GK Visual. I'm the director of the film, and our team put this together. So, what I'm thinking we'll do is I'll throw out a couple questions here, and then we'll open up to everybody else. So think about questions, and the best we can, we'll try to answer them. But I just want to throw this out to everybody. We are in a government shutdown. So right there. Has this impacted anybody here yet?
Quite a bit. This has actually been a pretty big growing story here locally with a couple different news outlets and newspapers reaching out to quite a bit of us. It has seriously impacted us because of the fact that our entire business model was built around new beer releases and new distribution on a weekly basis. And being that we can't get label approval, and Pennsylvania is one of the only states that I know of, and I've worked in 4 different states now for different breweries. Pennsylvania is one of the only states that requires a federal label approval for something that is not leaving the state of Pennsylvania. So with that being said, we cannot get TTB approval for things that I can literally, I'm trying to sell across the street to a bar and restaurant on the other side of the alleyway of us. Because Pennsylvania requires these federal approvals. So it has hurt our business significantly when people expect us every Monday to see a distribution list with 1 or 2 new beers. And I've had to send out a mass email saying, sorry, we're not going to sell anything to anybody unless they want some of our year-round stuff because of that.
You guys want to just take the mics off the stand and just pass them?
Well, for us, it's impacted us a little bit, except for today we're releasing a new beer at the brewery. We used our Surprise, it's another IPA label, which is a generic IPA label. We kind of change the hops up every single time. So we had a beer that was destined to be a new beer, and we weren't going to get label approval. So we decided to release it under the name Surprise, it's another IPA, government shutdown double IPA. Now, it's not new packaging, but we kind of figured we pushed the limits a little bit on that. But down the road is a big concern because we have some projects lined up for things in April and March, and we're worried about them in January because they're saying at least 45 to 60 days once the government's back open for label approval. So it will get interesting to say the least. But in today's market, we heard it in the video, in the film. It is founded on new beers all the time, and that's going to be a difficult thing if it doesn't get opened back up soon.
Anybody else? All right, one thing we talked a lot about in the film is the bubble, and we've shown this film all over the state, and that's probably the number one question I still get, even though we talk about it in the film. So I might as well ask you guys, and is there a bubble? Are you guys feeling pressure from, I think, we're coming close to 400 breweries now in the state. Are you feeling that? Is it helping? Steph, what are you seeing as you travel?
I don't travel to breweries anymore. I actually find that the more breweries that are opening, the less that I'm going and seeking new breweries out. I'm finding myself going and visiting the same breweries and drinking the same beers over and over again. And for me to say that is insane. I had that lofty, I had to get the 10,000 unique check-ins and Untapped, and now that I have that badge, all is good, But no, I was that consumer that had to have every single beer. I'd go to a brewery and I had to sample everything, and I'm over it. And people that do that now actually piss me off. And as I'm like, just get a pint of freaking beer and drink it. Looking at people that rate beers and put 1 star, I don't like Doppelbocks anyway. Well, then why the hell did you order a Doppelbock? It doesn't make sense to me anymore. I think that mentality, and that was me, that mentality is hurting the beer industry more than it's helping it. Go learn about beer, learn the styles you like, drink the beers that you want, and go back to the breweries that you like. You don't have to try everything. You don't have to hit every brewery. Support the ones that are doing good things and making good beer, like these guys here.
I'm going to follow suit on that. As good as Untapped is, Rate Beer, Beer Advocate, we're kind of a pain in the butt to kind of look and see what ratings were. Untapped has been nice to see a quicker reflection of how your beer is doing, except for the people that order IPAs that hate hoppy beers. But it is, there's that aspect of everybody has to have something new. And I get that aspect of it, but there's something to be said for people that just make good lagers, people that make good stouts. You know, in terms of the bubble, I constantly preach. It's interesting how we have legislation for how many liquor licenses you're going to have in a certain area, but there's no legislation whatsoever for how many breweries there are in a certain area. And especially now with Act 39, and how you pretty much get a full liquor license in Pennsylvania for $5,000 when you're talking a regular liquor license is $450 or upwards of $750,000 in the state of Pennsylvania. It's much easier to open a brewery. When you open a brewery, you open a tap, you know, you get a full liquor license with it. And there is a crunch, and it's not a crunch in materials because growers are growing more because they expect more breweries to open. But I think this year was the first year in a long time where closings came close to openings. Next year they're saying closings will supersede openings. It says a lot. You know, as much as a consumer wants new, it hurts the industry in the grand scheme. All of us, you know, whatever anybody wants to say is, we're in this because we love beer, but we're also in this because it's a business. And the more breweries that are there, it is gonna hurt. And I agreed with what was said in the movie about the ones that are going to succeed are the ones that are brew pubs. You know, your local on-site sales is what's going to survive, and that's why you see guys like Deschutes, Speakeasy, Old Saratoga. These regional distribution breweries are the ones that are suffering, going bankrupt. You know, I mean, I think Green Flash was a huge realization in terms of how quickly something can go wrong. So hopefully we'll figure it out, but it's definitely, it's a very volatile and, as Carol said, interesting times ahead.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. I mean, it's not necessarily a bubble as much so as it is, you know, it used to be drink craft. You know, 10 years ago it was drink craft. It was get rid of the big guys, drink craft. And then it goes from drink craft to drink local. And now everybody's saying drink local. Well, you know, York's a great example. I mean, there's 6 breweries now with Old Forge opening up 2 months ago within a mile of each other. You know, within walking distance, there's 6 of us. And it's just like, you know, just like in Pennsylvania as the rest of the country, it's getting to the point where now it's going from, you know, drink craft to drink local to drinking good. And as breweries continue to pop up, you know, it's going to weed out some of the guys that are, you know, just in it to make a quick buck, or some of the guys that, you know, don't necessarily have a business background or a brewing background or a combination of both. And, you know, that necessary bubble isn't really a bubble, but something's going to burst.
Do you want to say anything?
Yeah, I was gonna say my biggest concern with Noble Stein, they're saying about suppliers, you know, with all these, you know, Anheuser-Busch, InBev buying all the hop farms and maltsters and squeezing out the smaller breweries, I think is the biggest concern, in my opinion, is they're gonna start monopolizing the market.
So we have a wide variety here on stage of how long we've been open as a brewery and in working to open. If you guys could maybe just give a little bit of insight of maybe when you opened and what were the difficulties when you opened and how that maybe has changed.
So, well, I guess I'm working for the oldest here. I've not been with them since opening. I'm the 3rd head brewer for Lancaster Brewing in 23 years. I think we are the 2nd oldest next to Stouts. But with that, there's trend changes, style changes, the ability to adapt to what the industry is asking for. Am I making a glitter beer? No. But for the longest time, I mean, I still have an issue with hazy IPAs. You know, for the longest time, it was like, well, I had it hazy for a week and it's crystal clear, and somebody's like, well, it's not murky enough. And I'm like, I got yeast. And yeah, I can just give you yeast. And that was like, oh, is nature telling me I shouldn't make this? But it's definitely, I mean, even since I've been brewing, you know, 1,100 breweries now to 8,000 almost. it's been interesting. There's challenges throughout. I always like to say we take 2 steps forward, 1 step back. You know, as long as we're constantly trying to get better. There's always going to be bumps in the road. There's always going to be issues. You know, you're gonna expand distribution, or you're gonna increase production pretty rapidly, and you're gonna hit stutter steps. But as long as you get through it and figure it out and are honest with the public about what's going on, then things will get easier. This is my 7th brewery that I've worked at, and it's been fun. It's always good to take an old brand and see what else you can do with it. So.
So we're about to have our 8th anniversary in a couple weeks. February 2nd, if you want to come out to the tap room. Had to.
Get the plug in there.
So the most difficult thing when we opened was finding us. For those of you who were ever at our old location, Rod, I know you were. We were in like this back alley in Ephrata in the Donnacher's Artworks building, which has now been demolished. So that was the most difficult thing. And over the years, you know, we've grown our system, we've grown our distribution, our footprint. But realistically, you know, to go with some of the themes that we've been said here, Lancaster County is our home, and that's our bread and butter, and that's where we get, you know, sell the most beer and get the most support from. So I think the biggest challenge is, you know, how do you grow a company? How do you know, get deeper in those other areas that you're not right in? So how do we sell more beer in Berks County or Dauphin County or York County? You know, with the limited manpower and the size of our company, it's difficult to do that if you're not there every day, every week, seeing people. And then I'd say the other most difficult thing is kind of not having a crystal ball and seeing what's next. There's a million different things you could do.
I like your pun.
Yeah. I didn't actually. Okay, thanks. But honestly, it's crazy to see we as a company could go in 5 different directions or do 5 different things, and I don't know what's the right one. And if you can figure that out, you're going to be successful in the business right now, because it's an interesting time, as Carol said. It really is.
We've been around for about 1.5 years, and you know, so we're still cutting our teeth. We're trying to figure out where we do fit in this whole market. And you know, I think to your point, it's also, you know, how you find your niche and try to use the strength that you have in the brew pub model to, you know, maximize what you can do from a business standpoint. But also trying to, you know, as was emphasized in the video quite a bit, is, you know, what can you do in the community, and how can you embrace the community, and how can they help embrace you to, you know, for that long-term survivability and growth and prospects of what you can do with where you're trying to go with your business model. So I think that's where we're, you know, our biggest challenge right now is trying to figure out, you know, what we can continue to build and you know, and push on from where we started.
Yeah, well, go ahead if you want to. Oh, you're good. I'd say our biggest hurdle when we opened up was location and name. Collusion was not the first name that we picked. In fact, it was the 6th name that we picked. And going through trademark registration was an absolute hassle, to the point where it actually set us back a couple months because we couldn't pick an entity name for the brewery. Now, due to current recent events in the news and politics and whatnot, we happen to pick a pretty good name. So, you know, we're getting a lot of hits on our website and social media because of it. But location was a big one. You know, York is still, you know, in some circles considered, you know, kind of an outcast city. I mean, there's some places in York that are, you know, like any other city, some places in York that, you know, I wouldn't want to walk down the wrong alleyway at 2 o'clock in the morning. But I was like y'all, I was born and raised in York, grew up in York, moved away for a bit, came back, and there was no doubt that we were going to go back into York. And so far, it's been really good for us. So I mean, other than name and location, we had pretty smooth sailing. We were from the start of construction in February of 2016. We were opening in September of 2016. So we went pretty quick.
You want to get any insight on what you're working on, or
Well, yeah.
the difficulties you're facing?
I mean, the difficulties we've been facing over the years, we've been looking for locations for about 4 years. Parking has been our biggest concern. And it's like you're just looking for a restaurant to go out of business and hope that, oh wait, the ceilings are too short and then you gotta rebuild the roof. So we've struggled through the years, and we've finally found a location in Mechanicsburg where we'll be building brand new. It's very nerve-wracking, but we know we're building, and what we expect is what we hopefully get, and not we end up cracking the foundation because we put the drain in the wrong place. So we hope by mid to late 2020 we'll finally open our doors.
I'll do one more question, and then we'll throw it to the audience here. I want to talk about trends. This film, I think the last trend we talked about here was New England IPAs, and we've all already seen brewed IPAs come out since then, and other things. So, throw this out. Maybe even Steph, maybe you want to kick this off, what you're seeing, and then anybody else that wants to jump in, what's next?
Well, first, I think it's funny because I've never met a brewer that actually likes making New England IPAs, so I think that's funny. I think the problem with trends is the difference between being a trend follower and a trend setter. And I think too many breweries try to follow the current trends and kind of get themselves in a hole, where I think that the future of beer is creating new trends and doing things that someone isn't already doing. I'm frustrated when I go to a brewery and all they have on tap is hazy IPAs, because that's not what I want to drink. So I'm hoping that the Rausch beer or English milds become cool again, but I don't know that they will. But I think, like the brewed IPA, that was a new trend, but I don't know that the answer is a bunch of East Coast brewers now making brewed IPAs, which whatever, they taste good, I'll drink them. But I think the future of beer is making your own trend, like Carol Stout did. She brewed the beers that people told her, don't brew those, no one is going to drink them, and she said, no, I want to drink them. And we're still talking about her and we're interviewing her. So I think that's the challenge, is to look for something and be brazen enough to brew something that someone may or may not like, but it's different than what everyone else is doing.
I got some good advice a long time ago about, making beer, not following, the crowd per se, is brew what you like. If you look at, the target market of craft beer, you're not going to get much more of a target market than what we are here. If we don't know what we like, certainly no one else is going to enjoy what we're making either. That doesn't that's not to mean that you don't listen to and get feedback from your customers and things like that. But if you don't enjoy what you're doing, if you're just as to your point on the hazy IPA, if that's not your thing, you're not going to put your heart into it, and it's not going to become a really great beer. So do what you like to do, and the crowds will follow. It's kind of like that. If you go it, they'll come. That's always been kind of our philosophy, and we have not had issues with that in the year and a half that we've been doing this so far. So.
I'm gonna chime in. Trends suck. They do. You're like you said, if you're not the forefront of it, you're chasing your tail the whole time. That's why we've got Heady Topper. That's why we got Lawson's, because they were the forefront of the New England IPA. The brewed IPA was the answer. In the West Coast, got the spotlight taken off of them. They were like, oh, we got to come up with something else. What I see in terms of trend, one, and I think you're seeing it across the board, is back to tradition. People are doing lagers again, doing traditional styles, English milds, oatmeal stouts, pilsners, beyond lagers. The beers that have been around and have tested true decade after decade. Beyond that, and I hate to say this, hard seltzer. I hate to say it, but everybody is health conscious.
Less carbs.
Everybody wants less carbs. Everybody's got celiac disease, apparently. So everybody wants gluten-free. So there's that market. I always call it's the second coming of Zemo. But it's true. I mean, it's an alternative malt beverage, and we can do it under our licensing. We can hopefully do it better than Zima, but it's another market. People are drinking more spirits. People are drinking more wine. People are drinking more cider. We've got to find our niche for that low carb, gluten-free kind of aspect. And I think we can do it. I think we can do it well. And like I said, I'll reiterate, trends suck because they're finicky and people are finicky, and you're constantly going to be looking for, can I come up with something new that somebody else hasn't done? But 9 times out of 10, somebody else did it. You just didn't hear about it. I agree. You know, I've always said I make beer that I like to drink, and hopefully you do too. But it's still a business. We gotta follow both aspects of it.
I think what you said there at the end is exactly what we've tried to do as a company. Try to find that happy medium between brewing traditional styles. We have a year-round English mild if everybody wants one.
I drink a lot of it.
Yeah, I'm glad. Thanks. I love it. I mean, it's low ABV, lots of flavor, and you can drink a lot of it and still have a good night. But I think we, as a company, have never said, "Oh, we're going to do this one thing or this one thing." It is hard to argue numbers when we do brew a New England IPA and we sell a 30-barrel batch quicker than we ever sell anything else. So there's that business side that you said. It's hard to ignore that, but it's not who we are or who we want to be as, one note brewery. So I think a trend that I hope to see is that well-rounded brewery that can do all styles, whether it's a lager, English mild, New England stout. If somebody can come in and they can choose anything off your tap board and know that you're getting a quality beer, then you've done something right. So that's what I'm hoping is a trend in the future, because that's what I'd like to do when I go into breweries.
Anybody else?
I think the big trend with where things are going are just local. People are saying, hey, these hops were grown a mile from here. This malt was grown about 25 miles from here, and this beer was created here. I think people knowing where every ingredient came from versus where, it came from Europe, came from Canada, to have it come from somewhere local, I think is going to be a really big push for what's coming.
Yeah, I mean, as far as trends go, I can't really say that we follow any sort of trend at Collusion because we kind of make all of it. I mean, we don't really have any certain styles that we focus on because, to be honest, there's some days I don't want to drink an IPA. There's some days I want to go back and drink a Belgian triple because I fucking love Belgians, man. And that's what I mean, my first beer was, not my first beer, but my first craft beer was Gold Monkey. I walked into a little shitty pizza shop and it's like, oh, that's a cool label. I'll take one of those. And 2 of those later, when I'm 21 years old, 9%, I'm just like, this is awesome. This was so cheap. But I like traditional beers. I mean, that's why we brew a year-round Pilsner. We do a year-round Berliner Weiss. We do a year-round, 3 year-round IPAs. We do, a year-round coffee stout. We do stuff that I like to drink. If I'm in the mood to make something, if I'm in the mood to drink something, I'm going to make it. So, that's kind of where we go with trends. Yes, we do the hazy IPAs. Yes, we do the sours. Yes, we do the pastry stouts. Yes, we kind of, tag along with everybody else and, follow some of those trends, but we still have English milds on draft. We, just like you do. We still have, your classic Pilsners on draft. We have a Vienna Lager every once in a while. We do an Oktoberfest. And that's what I really think it's getting back into is the old school, old style, traditional lagers. I mean, Pilsners are a big thing. I love them. I love drinking Pilsners. So that's where I think everything's going.
Amen. Pilsners.
All right, I'm gonna open this up. You can ask questions about the film. You can ask questions about the brewers, beer in general. So does anybody have any questions?
I do. It's a 2-pronged question.
All right.
First to staff, I would love to know what led to your career path into this, arena. And to the other guys, I would really like to know your thoughts on female brewers, female cellarmen, and how many you each have probably in your each breweries.
So my career is I'm actually a 4th grade teacher. And I love it. I do love my kids. I started home brewing, 7 years ago. And like most things in my life, I become quite obsessed with them because that's my personality. So beer became everything. And I had this crazy idea that I wanted to become a brewer and I was gonna open my own brewery. And I have a husband that's super loving and supportive and will never say no to me. God bless you, Rich. So I applied and got accepted to the American Brewers Guild, and I reached out to Carol Stout. I actually hand wrote her a letter telling her my aspirations and asking if she would meet with me, and she did. She and I sat down and had a good 3-hour talk, and she told me how it was. And she said, Steph, if you're gonna open a brewery, wait till all these shitty breweries close and buy up their equipment. And I was like, that's the best advice ever. So I did the program. I had one of the best weeks of my life. I did a residency week up in Vermont, and then I did an internship with Iron Hill in Lancaster, which was phenomenal and such a great experience. Great experience because I love what I learned, but I also learned that I don't want to open a brewery. It's not what I wanted to do with my life, knowing what I could make as an assistant brewer at Iron Hill, and then knowing what I'd be giving up as far as a salary and a pension and my love for travel and summers off. But do I regret that? Absolutely not, because I have so much respect for what these guys do, and my knowledge of craft beer is way more than it ever was. So I went the media route, and my cousin and I, and now my 2 cousins and I, started this media company, which will now be 6 years old. 6 years ago, in April, we recorded our first podcast episode in my basement, and it's been really fun. And I think we are legitimized because I have this education and this experience in the brewery, because at least one of the 3 of us knows what the hell we're talking about. And it also gives me an opportunity to pull out my pink boots, and if I call up one of my brewing buddies, I can pretty much go into a brewery and brew beer if I really want to, which is pretty freaking amazing. But the best thing about what I do and why I love being a part of the media side of this is I get to give a face and a voice to the craft brewing world. Because for me, I choose the breweries that I go to because I personally know the people that work there and own those breweries. When I walk into St. Boniface and Dain or John are there and I'm chatting with them, or I go to Oakbrook and Kyle is there behind the bar, or I go to Workhorse and Dan is there. I know these guys, I know their stories, I know what they went through to open these places, and that means something. And to be able to share that to the rest of the world, and for them to have a platform, whether it's our podcast or Nate's Films, to show you who they are and what they do and why they do this, I think it just takes it to the next level. Big Beer doesn't have that. It doesn't, Probably Dick Yingling is as big beer as we'll get with putting a face on one of those. So that's how I got here, I guess. I think that answers your question, but I'm really proud and honored to have been a part of this project, and I'm really proud to be just a tiny part of what is Pennsylvania beer, because it's exciting.
Thank you.
I don't remember what other question.
I was going to say, in terms of female brewers in the industry, there's a lot more than I would say. I'd love to see a lot more. You look at the Yingling daughters, they're the ones that run that place. The Coors daughters, they're the ones that run that. You're seeing more and more female-owned and operated breweries. When I was down in Florida, we worked with the old R&D brewer for Anheuser-Busch. She created her own, they call it High Heels Brewing, totally female-owned and operated. There's the Pink Boots Society. There's Pink Boots Hops that they've done as well. It's fantastic. It definitely has been a male-oriented industry for a long time. It doesn't need to stay that way. It's all about creativity. We're glorified chefs, I hate to say that, but it's true. We take ingredients and we put our spin on them, and we make them into an art form. So what's to say that a female couldn't do it better than a man, honestly?
We can do it better than men. Science proves it.
Yeah, I mean,
Sorry.
when I was in school, when I was in beer school in Chicago, I went to school with this girl named Ashley Kinnard, and forgive me, because I can't remember the name of the brewery that she's at now, but she's in Wisconsin, and I believe last year or the year before, she was one of the first ones out of our school to go and become a head brewer right off the bat, and it was literally the day after school, and I guess she had this plan in her head beforehand, and had discussed it with the other brewery owners beforehand. But last year, the year before, she went on to win not only 3 or 4 gold medals, but a couple silvers and a couple bronzes at the U.S. Beer Open, and ended up winning for the best brewery in the country at U.S. Beer Open. So I think the whole, yes, this is a male-dominated industry, but there's absolutely 100% respect, from us to female brewers, because you're coming into an industry that is, yes, male-dominated, but you're doing your thing. You're doing a great job at it, and it's nice to see that, and respect for her for doing what she's doing, knowing how well she's doing.
That's a good point about the industry. The people that work in the industry accept women and want women to be a part of this. It's actually the other side. It's the consumer that isn't always accepting of it. There are multiple beer fests that I've worked with Wayne and Dan, my co-partners of Beer Busters, and people will come up and talk to us about beer, and instinctually they will go to Wayne and Dan first. And I know 10 times more about beer than the two of them combined, and that's a fact. And, I used to just sit back and be like, whatever, I'm the girl, they don't think I know anything about beer, that's fine, but I don't accept it anymore. And, I think that the industry is doing a much better job at saying, hey, women can brew too, and organizations like the Pink Boots Society. I think even social media is really helping, like Hannah at Free Will with her Lipstick Brewer handle on Instagram. They're making it obvious that women can do this, and they can still look good doing it like she does with her red lipstick, but people are noticing, women can do this, and they are doing it quite well.
Well, and to that point, women have been in the industry for a long time.
Women did this industry first.
Yeah, it's just where the spotlight's been, and the spotlight's opening up. That's all it is.
When I first had a first cut of this film, I showed it to a bunch of people to see what they thought. And if you watch it, it is kind of chunked out into sections. And so I actually had a woman ask me why we put the female brewer part in the beginning. I'm like, that's the history part. Because we have Carol Stout there, we have Cindy at Penn Brewery, and we have Dock Street there, which is a female-run brewery. So, Pennsylvania's history is rich with female.
Well, the history in general too of brewing it was done by women before it was done by men. Men had to work. They had to be in the factories. Women were the ones that were making beers. They were the ones that were running the breweries. All pre-Prohibition, it was a female industry. And then when men probably lost their jobs and they were like, what the hell am I gonna do now? I guess I'll make beer. It kind of changed over. So it's been there. It's just spotlight changed.
I just have to add, women have more taste buds than men, so they are actually going to be better quality control. So I think women in the craft beer industry, it's definitely needs to be increased, because I think as far as quality control, there's your panel. Just get half a dozen women, they're going to be able to taste that beer better than you're going to have half a dozen. She picks up on things before I do sometimes.
There we go.
I'm curious about distribution. So right now, the big thing is go to the brewery, get your 4-packs, whatever it is, and that's like the big thing right now. But like Wolf, I want your beer, but I can't get it right now, right? So like, I'm curious about where is the industry going with the trend right now being, I need to go to a brewery and get a 4-pack, a special release of a can, versus like, I just want to go to a local distributor and pick up a Wolf 4-pack because I really want your beer, but I can't get it right now because I can't find a brewery. It's too far away, that kind of thing. thank God, St. Boniface, I can get you anywhere at this point. Collusion, I have to come down to New York to get your like local releases, that kind of thing. So I'm just kind of curious where you guys feel like the distribution is going, and is it going to be always? Is it going toward a place where I always have to go to the brewery to get the best and most recent thing, or can I expect to get something really good at a local distribution place?
Distribution sucks.
Yeah.
Always go to the brewery for your freshest and best product.
There are so many factors that come into play when it comes to distribution. That's why we self-distribute. If I'm gonna, if I'm gonna go through a distributor that's AB owned, or well, not AB owned, but dominated, or Miller Coors dominated, then my beer's gonna sit on the shelf, and they're not gonna push my product. I've got to do it myself. If I go to a mom and pop shop to distribute, I don't know how they're going to handle my beer. I don't know if it's going to be sitting out on the warm shelf or sitting back in their warehouse at 85, 90 degrees. And then our anamorphous, that we sell out of the brewery on release days is going to turn to absolute shit because they're not treating it right. And that's, and the laws in Pennsylvania are actually okay for distribution from a brewer's perspective because I can pick and choose where I want to sell my beer unless I sign them with a distributor. And then I've sold my, I've lost my soul at that point because they can do whatever they want with my product and I have no say in it anymore. But these guys have been doing it a lot longer than we have, so.
You sell your primary or secondary rights, so you can retain your primary rights and sell off your secondary, which means you can still work with the distributor, but retain control. He's right, distribution sucks. I get calls all the time. Hey, I'm up in Tannersville. Where can I get my beer? Like, where can I get Lancaster Brewing? All I can tell you is the wholesaler that we deal with up in that area. At that point, I lose total control over my product. Even when it gets to that warehouse, I lose total control of that product. The brewery will always be the best place to get it. In terms of where distribution is going, I think eventually you're going to be forced to go to the brewery.
Yep.
Everybody's scaling back. Kind of like what Dain said. 85% of our sales are Pennsylvania. So I'm in 6 other states plus DC, and it's only 15% of our sales. For ease, for you to go to a distributor, absolutely, that's what you want. And it would make everything easier, and I'm going to sell extra units to you and extra units to your buddies.
I don't want to stand 3-hour lines anymore at a brewery. That's the thing too.
And that's a hype that's created by a brewery or by consumers.
We had one beer that we had a line for.
Really?
And it was our Screamer beer. We had the Screamer series.
There's
Those
times
beers
where
were
I
on.
say like, oh man, I want a line around the corner, and then I'm like, no, I don't.
No, you don't.
It is. It's why do 12-ounce bottles of Toppling Goliath KBBS go for $1,000 on the trade market? It's a madness created by the consumer, unfortunately. It's the same thing. Why can't I get it in my local distributor when somebody else can get it and they can sell it to me for 7,000% over value? Why do people age beer? I'm going to buy beer and drink it. In terms of distribution, though, everything is becoming, it's a local beer tourism market now. You're not going to go to California and buy Pennsylvania beer. You're not going to go to Pennsylvania and buy California beer. You're going to want to go to the source and make it beer tourism. You're going to find a local area, just like I do, and you're going to look up on Google Maps and you're going to say, what brewery is closest to me? How many breweries are there? I spent 3 days down in Charleston. I hit 9 breweries. Literally, I think I was drunk all day long. But that's what you do. That's what you want to do. And that's where you're going to find the best product. And if you want to take something home, take it home from the brewery. Because I can tell you, every time you go into Wise or Giant, everything that's on those shelves is 3 months old already.
I don't know if you heard this before, but distribution sucks. Pennsylvania's good because you do have the ability to self-distribute as a brewery until you can't handle any more than what you can handle as a company. So for us, that's Lancaster County. And we have wholesalers in counties from Philadelphia to Gettysburg. And you can go in those markets and find old beer that we wouldn't be proud of, but unfortunately, that's the nature of the beast. What we try to do with our special releases, which you talking about, we do enough for us to have about, we usually keep, we kind of have this equation that we made up for no reason. We keep about 50 cases at our brewery. We usually run about 100, sometimes 150. And then from that point, the 50 at our tap room will do mostly in Lancaster County, to whether they're on premise or off premise distributors, bottle shops, things like that. And then maybe we'll send 5 cases and a keg to this wholesaler, 5 cases and a keg to this wholesaler. And a lot of times they're already pre-marked for people or accounts. And those accounts are ones that we've had relationships with before we went with the wholesaler. So it's not a good thing, because when your beer gets old, then the distributor wants to sell it at a discount, and then you have to split that discount with them, and it's just not a good thing. And it's and once you sign those contracts, you can't get out of them. They're in perpetuity. If primary rights, like Mark was talking about. So it's a difficult thing to get out of if you're not happy with the situation. Pennsylvania has been trying to work on some reform for that, but there are forces that are working against that as well.
Any other questions? In the back?
You interviewed the lady from the PA Department of Agriculture. Are you guys working with like local farms, dairy farmers especially? Like they're struggling to get some of those crops that you say you're having trouble getting, hops, grains, things like that, to get them to make that cash crop for you guys specifically. Lancaster County has some of the richest farm soil in the world. I think that could be an untapped resource that, could be there and beneficial.
We should talk about local ingredients and sometimes the difficulties of using that and the pluses of that.
I would say there's a huge plus in the fact that some of the discussion we had earlier was people think, oh, this was grown right down the road, these hops were here. The problem is when it has to be cost effective to the brewery as well. And there has to be a point where you can find a happy medium. We haven't been able to brew a beer with local hops and grains, not because we don't have access to it, because financially we'd have to charge prices that we think consumers wouldn't accept. I put it that way. So that's the one big drawback, because of the size of the brewery that we are with a 15 barrel system. It makes it difficult at this point. It's not that we're never going to do it. We talk about it all the time and try to figure a way out to do it. So I hope it's something that we can do this year. That's one thing that we've talked about. But whether that happens or not, it remains to be seen.
On the other side of it, I think all of us are probably constantly working with local farmers in the spent grain aspect. It's a symbiotic relationship. We have a waste product that is protein-rich grain. We actually give ours away to hidden farms. We don't charge them. We've talked about it a couple times, but it's feed for their cattle. In terms of the agriculture, we have the largest naturally irrigated land in the country in Lancaster County, which is fantastic. He's very right though, economies of scale, on the business side of things. When you've got a local supplier that wants to charge you, let's say $30 a pound for a pound of hops, and you've got your brokers that are charging you $10 a pound, just like everything else, unfortunately, it gets passed down to the consumer. Even looking at grains, we were approached by a local Pennsylvania grower and maltster, and they wanted $3 a pound for barley, when nobody in the industry is going to come even close to that. It's probably like 6 to 7 times what any brewer is paying. I think it's nice to use local ingredients, but you almost have to kind of subsidize in. The other aspect I look at too is hops are expensive to make, honestly. I mean, you're looking 3 years before you have any sort of yield that would be beneficial. Most of your banks are going to ask for 5 years worth of contracts from, for a certain amount of yield just to make it beneficial for them to give you all the equipment that you're going to need to grow hops. Our climate is temperate, and it's great for growing all sorts of different agriculture, especially fruits, that we can use in our products as well. Just hops and barley, they don't grow so well in this area, and that's why you see a lot of wheat, you see a lot of corn, you see a lot of apples, a lot of fruits and berries. Just for the largest consumption of ingredients that we use, Pennsylvania is not the most ideal climate for it. And because of that, then you see that the price kind of escalates, and it makes it difficult to find. Now we're seeing a change in that, at least in the aspect of we're seeing regionally local suppliers. Proximity Malt is one. They were originally out of Colorado. They have a malt house now in Delaware, all locally grown Delaware barley, malted in Delaware, and we're going to start working with them. But we haven't seen anybody in Pennsylvania that's able to kind of match the size and growth that we would need to see from a supplier at the price, like he said, that makes it beneficial to both us and to you. Because just like gasoline, if you're going to pay $3 a gallon, even though oil may not be $3 a gallon anymore, you're still stuck paying it. I hate to say that, but it's kind of the truth of things. Hops, we had a big escalation. They've gone back down, they've gone back up, they've escalated, but the price is kind of where it's at. And that's kind of where we're at this point.
Yeah, I mean, it's like they all said, it's a combination of things. We priced out using locally sourced hops and locally sourced barley in some of our beers, and I mean, the cost increase would be almost 350% compared to what we currently make a beer for. And nobody wants to pay $15 for a pint of IPA. That's pretty much what it comes down to. But region plays a big role in it as well. Because of current beer trends, the styles of hops, the hop varieties and the barley varieties that are available here locally don't necessarily fall into the current beer trends as far as usability, just because this region isn't really equipped climate-wise to grow the variety that all the people desire. Your big, juicy, hazy IPAs use very, specific hop varieties that just don't grow here. And from a business perspective, unfortunately, you have to look at it from both sides. As brewers, we want to be able to brew locally and grow locally and make those types of beers that we want to make with local ingredients. But from a business perspective, the cost analysis on it is, not in line with everything else. And the styles that we would be able to make with locally sourced ingredients don't necessarily fall into what we know that we can sell. And that's, it's just an unfortunate part of the region of Pennsylvania. And that's not to say we don't want to, because I'm sure there's every single person sitting up here would love to use all local ingredients all the time. And Pennsylvania has a great agricultural background, and there's widespread agriculture throughout the entire state. It's just a matter of what sells. And it's shitty to say that. It's shitty to have to say that we can't necessarily use some of the local stuff because we know it's not going to sell, and it'll go bad, it'll go stale, and then it's a waste.
Take one more question if anybody has anything else. Yep.
Look, first of all, I live in Lancaster and I love Collusion. I have to tell friends to look at their Google Maps to find me when I'm down there because it's a little tricky off the beaten path, but nowhere to disrespect anybody else. I have been home brewing since 1988, and to me, local means fresh, and the freshness of an IPA is everything to me. Like, you can't beat the freshness of an IPA. I drive up to Treehouse to get Julius, and my wife teases me because I get giddy while I wait an hour and a half to get the stuff that was canned that day. And I just plead to you guys, don't give up on the hazy stuff because I want the local fresh IPA here, and like some county, like some counties make it. And
Everybody's drinking something now.
Shameless plug, we got a double IPA releasing tomorrow morning at 12
And
o'clock.
more
for everybody
for
at 23.
It's not going anywhere.
IPAs are 40% of the market.
Yeah.
They're
The
not.
local's fresh to me.
65 to 70% of the stuff that we make are IPAs, and that's not going to change.
I think
Drive
that's a
to
good.
York to get your IPAs, not Massachusetts.
Oh, that's
I think that's a good segue. I wanted to end with everybody to just go down the line and just kind of say what's next. What's if you have something to plug, a beer release coming up, a festival. Steph, what's the next podcast? You know, if we just maybe start on that end, just work our way down here and say what's going on in your brewery or what you're doing.
All right, I already did a couple shameless plugs, but yeah, our 8th anniversary party is February 2nd. We'll be releasing our 8th anniversary. I'm not gonna say it. No, Hegemony Anniversary Stout. I'm not going to say it with the 8 in it like you want me to. But and then you know we got a couple exciting things coming up. We got a project going on with LNP to celebrate their 225th anniversary. We're excited we're partnering with Lancaster County Conservancy for something for Water Week. I knew you guys were back there. And then Boniface will be in June, so if you're looking for something to do June 8th, come on out.
Hegemonatory? That's hard to say. I try to get him to say it every year. So we have our 160th episode being released on Friday with, it's going to be a good one. We got Gene from Tired Hands on for once. That was it. I asked him about flour. I'll put it out there. So if you want to know the answer, you can listen to that one.
They never responded to us when we asked them about the film.
He's a really cool guy. Anyway, so beerbusterspodcast.com is where you can find all the information. We release podcast episodes every other Friday. We heavily support Pennsylvania breweries, but we record everywhere from New York, New Jersey. We're going to be recording in Delaware again and hopefully into Maryland. So the podcast is our pride and joy. So check it out.
Let's see, Lancaster. 25th anniversary of Milk Stout. They were actually brewing it before it was open. They still claim to fame it's the oldest milk stout in the country before Left Hand. So that's this year. There should be promos going on all year round. We have a Pinot Noir aged Flanders Red that's been in there since August of 2017. We're hopefully going to start bottling 750s end of February, so that should be awesome. I'm doing a hard seltzer. Sorry.
I'll drink it.
First in Lancaster County. We're gonna do 4 flavors out of one batch: blackberry, black cherry, peach, and lemon lime. But we had to check it out. So, other than that, we're just we got a can line last May, so that was fun. It's still a pain in my ass, but that was fun. Other than that, now I mean, we'll just keep trying to get better. Keep trying to have fun. Keep trying to make good beer.
We have in the next few months, hopefully we'll be announcing where we'll be and hopefully a timeline for when we'll be opening. I know it's been a long time coming and we're excited to let everybody know. We don't necessarily know our timeline exactly yet, but hopefully in those next few months we'll be able to get it all out there and let everybody know.
So tomorrow, our version of the Resilience IPA for the fire victims is being released, as well as our it's a great cause for that, as well as our Hazy New England IPA is going to be put back on tomorrow as well. Usually not much of a week that goes by that there's not some kind of an event that we put on. So you always look for those kind of things. We have a bourbon barrel Russian Imperial Stout that's going to be starting to get bottled off here in about another couple weeks. So that'll probably be released another month or so after that, after it gets bottle conditioned out.
A couple of things. Once again, tomorrow, Anniversary number 23, noon at the brewery, 30 cases.
That guy will be in line.
And I was gonna say, like I said, I've never had a line for a can release as of yet. I don't know if too many people know that we actually even can. We just got our canning line about 2.5 months ago. So I had a couple people ask me about us coming to Lancaster. The rumors are true for us coming to Lancaster County for another tap room. I'm not going to say where.
Nice.
I'm not going to say when because all those details are still being worked out. But if everything goes the way that I want it to, we will have a little offshoot tasting room in Lancaster County. And since this is Portland, PA, we were just me and Ben, my other brewer, were just last week talking about doing a Pennsylvania-only Stout Fest. So we've kind of narrowed it down. February 23rd of this year, we're going to have Pennsylvania-only stouts on draft at the brewery. We're going to be doing a couple different collaborations for that day, which are still in the works. And all 24 draft lines of ours will be stouts. If you want IPAs, get them in the can, because this is going to be a completely blacked out board for that day. But yeah, other than that, just thanks everybody for being here. This is pretty awesome.
And I'll just give you a little update on the film and where we're at with the film. We are coming up in April will be when we kind of wrap shooting on everything. So it's actually, we're starting to see a lot of things change. Brian from Sly Fox has now opened a brewery in the Old Yards location, and a couple other people have shifted between breweries and gone different places. So our goal is to release this on Amazon and then do a little Where Are They Now addition to the film, so you can check that out when that comes to be. We had a great turnout tonight, so there might be a chance that this will show here again sometime. So if that's the case, please let your friends know. And we have a couple more screenings around the state. So I really appreciate everybody coming out, especially with the weather. So be safe getting home, and thank you.